What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and something that was on my mind after seeing a couple of the tweets, the reactions to the Aaron Rodgers news. He won't be on the 2025 roster. Not only seem to rub some fans and analysts the wrong way, it seems to rub Quinnen Williams the wrong way as well. He gave it a thumbs down emoji and then later commented he guesses he'll have to go through another rebuild, right? Which, if you're Quinnen Williams, I completely understand. You've developed yourself into a top tier player at your position in some of the most horrendous conditions possible, right? And throughout that whole time, you've never really complained. You've been the ultimate culture guy. You've been willing to be that example for the rest of the squad to look at, especially considering he's more that introverted guy, taking that step to really kind of be the mouthpiece for the defense, right? Seeing him get fiery, that, Aaron White caught in sideline scuffling things. So this is a guy that knows how to go about things the right way. And I think under Aaron Glenn, he's a guy that both player and coach, they would just fall in love with each other. But with that said, I'm curious what you guys think. Trade conversations have opened up based on some tweets that I saw, right? Or at least that's what I want to discuss here. What would push the needle one way or the other for you guys to consider trading Quinnen Williams or not? Now, in my opinion, I think you need to give Aaron Glenn a crutch to lean on, right? He needs to have some kind of bread and butter, which is most likely going to be the defense, right? You need him to be able to go out there and say, this is the level of consistency, effort, and aggression that we put out on the field. I can guarantee this will be consistent and we'll be able to elevate other levels, right? Based on us adding in talent. With that said, though, does he want to walk? Again, 6 years of futility. He's lost more games than he ever has at any point in his career coming up. And the Jets, again, are looking to be in some facet of a rebuild mode, even if it follows the Lions' trajectory. You're talking about then Quinnen Williams coming up on conversations about what a secondary contract for him looks like. And I have no doubts that he could achieve that. But let's entertain the conversation. Quinnen Williams. There's been a decent amount of defensive tackle trades, but no really like blockbuster or landscape shattering trades, with the exception of maybe three or so in the last decade. DeForest Buckner going from the 49ers to the Colts, the Jets moving Sheldon Richardson to the Seahawks, and then the Ravens sending Haloti Ngata to the Lions. In each of those situations, there was pretty decent capital exchange, right? The Ravens get a fourth and a fifth. The Jets got Jermaine Kearse, a second and seventh. And then the 49ers got a 13th overall pick in the first round back in 2020 for him. So from the standpoint of, we have a huge question mark with our quarterback, right? Objectively speaking, and I was on the side of Aaron Rodgers needed to go just to make sure there's no hiccups, speed bumps, contentious ideas, etc., between Aaron Glenn and Aaron Rodgers, who we know is pretty vanilla in terms of how he wants to go about attacking off seasons, game planning, etc., etc. So we have a huge question mark. I'm a fan of Tyrod Taylor being able to go out there and lead the team, but still there's huge injury concerns. There's concerns with Jordan Travis behind him as well, who couldn't even see the field this year. And then, of course, you're talking about potentially entering in a rookie or maybe a veteran to also help compete. So there's not a sure thing out there, right? There's not a guy that you look at that you say, this will undoubtedly make sure our room is at least solid, right? I think a lot of the conversations are going to move to the Kirk Cousins connection because of Rick Spielman coming over, but then you're drastically falling off, right? You're talking about Jameis Winston potentially coming over or seeing what a guy like Mac Jones has to offer, et cetera, et cetera. Putting that aside, you might want to try to find an answer to the quarterback position in year one, because we know, especially in not where I want the conversation to go, but it has to be pointed out, the minority coaches don't necessarily get as much rope as the rest of the league when it comes to that head coach position. He could be ousted in year one if things go really left. So you want to find a way to really shore things up for him. Quinnen Williams can help boost that draft capital. If you believe in Cam Ward, you believe in Shedeur Sanders, or even if some kind of crazy third prospect creeps up, right? you now have the draft capital to be able to go out there and make it happen. And it's not crazy to think that the Jets may be able to land a top 10 pick and then some. Yesterday's prices are 100% not today's, right? And in this case, you're talking about, almost 5 years ago, which is an eternity in NFL football. The stats between DeForest Buckner 6 years in and Quinnen Williams aren't crazy, right? And for what it's worth, let's just run through Quinnen Williams' resume. First team All Pro, 3 Pro Bowls, granted this last one as an alternate, a top 7 Defensive Player of the Year finish, 90 games under his belt, 86 of those started. He has an interception, 14 pass deflections, 5 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 39 sacks, 98 quarterback hits, 52 tackles for loss, and 134 pressures to his name. Those being all of the sexy stats that people are going to look at and point out and do analysis for and call out, right? These are very similar enough to DeForest Buckner, and you have to put some caveats in place. DeForest Buckner's talent, his supporting cast on that defensive line, and even what was behind him in the back seven was much better than what arguably Quinnen Williams has been dealing with, right? Then you throw in the fact that the Quinnen Williams has been playing in a 3-4 system the first few years of his career, not really lending itself to a lot of those stats like sacks, like quarterback pressures, like quarterback hits to a degree because he's playing a two-gap scheme. If he was playing all 6 years, I would argue it's reasonable to say that he would beat out DeForest Buckner in many of these categories. So now you start looking at the top 10. What would be relative trade partners, right? You start looking at, would somebody want to bet on an established player like Quinnen Williams who still has the room to even get better versus do you want to take a chance on a top draft pick, right? Top 5, top 10 draft selection here, where even in the top 5, it doesn't matter if you're picking number 1, at best your odds are maybe a 65% hit rate. They dwindle extremely from that number, right? As you go into rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Some teams will be willing to do that, right? Every situation is crafted a little bit better. If guys feel like they're just a player or two away from being able to make that switch, playoffs, maybe go on a run, you make this option. Will these teams necessarily fit that mold? Not necessarily, but every regime makes some kind of huge splash, some kind of subtraction addition to the roster as they look to, kind of make that headline that this is a new regime, this is my vision, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, this also comes down to Quinnen. Will he put his foot in the sand and say, I want to be on a competitive team for once. I don't want to have to wait another year or two. The Raiders, the Jaguars, off the top of my head, 2 teams that will be mocked pretty consistently with Mason Graham, right? You could look at them and maybe consider that they would want to pick up somebody like Quinnen. Also helps that, they're being in the AFC as well. You're talking about potentially making a hole on somebody else's roster. There's a lot of different avenues to look at it, right? But let's say you get one of those top 5, top 7 type picks. The Jets receive a 4th or a 5th. I think that's the general range for both of those teams. And then they sweeten the pot a little bit and maybe they get you a mid-third rounder, something of that sort. Remember, Joe Douglas was a savant is being able to just absolutely rob people to their face. So I don't know if you can get that Sheldon Richardson type, reimbursement here where you're talking about still a pretty solid receiver in Curse, but a 2nd and a 7th. Who knows what Muji can do in that regard? But I think it's fair to say that you could get a top pick for Quinnen Williams, and maybe even if it isn't that 3rd round pick, something significant, right, in the 4th range, maybe multiple day 3 picks, something like that in that 4th to 5th range. I would say at that point, you start realistically having a conversation. If Quinnen Williams wants to return to the team, awesome. But if he's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you want somebody that's all bought in at every level. And it's one of the greatest stories I love, right? The Williams brothers, Quincy, Quinnen being there. Maybe that's something that makes Quincy want to start bouncing as well. But there's a lot of dominoes that could fall based on what you want to do with them or what you don't. And there's a lot of pluses, there's a lot of negatives to this as well, right? Maybe you decide you just want to continue to build the infrastructure or you use that as an opportunity to continue to trade down. Maybe you look to replace Quinnen with Mason Graham as part of your rebuilding vision. Who knows what that looks like, but I don't think this is as black and white of a conversation as I initially thought when I seen some of the tweets. That you shouldn't absolutely trade Quinnen, right? As dominant as he is, as awesome as a player in person as he is, these are business decisions. If you are feeling like you're truly in a rebuild, you want to speed this up and expedite this as much as possible. So again, appreciate all the support as always from you guys. You've been awesome. But let me know what you guys think about this. Are you doing it? Are you not? And why so? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.